She knew the Venmo notification would ruin her morning, but she checked it anyway. Kate Michelle Anderson's fingers trembled as she swiped her cracked iPhone 8 screen, watching the red numbers glare back at her. Rent, 3 days overdue. Walgreens' receipt for her sertraline prescription crumpled in her free hand as she sat on the edge of her unmade bed in her cramped Chicago studio apartment. Another day in paradise, she muttered, her wavy blonde hair catching the weak September sunlight streaming through her single window. The Brewhaven apron hung limp on her bedroom door like a surrender flag. 6 months since everything fell apart. 6 months since the doctors at Northwestern Memorial told her the words that shattered her world. 6 months since her marriage crumbled under the weight of grief that felt too heavy for 2 people to carry. Kate's phone buzzed again. Jessica's Instagram story. Sunday brunch with my perfect little family. Am blessed. The image showed golden pancakes, a smiling husband, and a chubby-cheeked baby reaching for strawberries. She closed the app before the familiar ache could settle deeper in her chest. Her Dailyo notification popped up. How are you feeling today? Kate stared at the mood tracking app, finger hovering over the emoji faces. Terrible. Exhausted. Broken. The usual suspects. The bus ride to work was a blur of gray buildings and gray faces. Kate pulled her Converse-clad feet closer, adjusting her delicate gold earrings, one of the few pretty things she still owned. The silver bracelet from her grandmother caught on her sleeve and she freed it gently, the way she'd learned to handle fragile things. Brewhaven smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. Kate tied her apron around her waist, muscle memory taking over as she prepped the espresso machine. The morning rush would start soon, lawyers grabbing macchiatos, college students ordering elaborate drinks they couldn't afford, office workers who treated her like part of the furniture. She was wiping down the counter when the door chimed. Kate looked up, ready to paste on her customer service smile, but the words died in her throat. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair perfectly styled despite the obvious exhaustion written across his handsome face. His green eyes were rimmed with red, and his usually crisp Banana Republic shirt was wrinkled. But it wasn't his appearance that made Kate's breath catch. It was the tiny bundle in his arms, crying with the desperate heart-wrenching wail that only a hungry newborn could make. The man stepped forward, his movements uncertain, almost pleading. His Apple Watch buzzed insistently, but he ignored it, focused entirely on the screaming baby. "Please," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what else to do." Kate's body responded before her mind could catch up, her arms already reaching toward the crying infant. And in that moment, she realized her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The baby's cry cut through every wall Kate had built around her heart. "His name is Owen," the man said, his voice barely audible over the infant's wails. "I'm Matthew Hayes. I don't know what I'm doing." Kate's hands moved instinctively, cradling the tiny bundle against her chest. Owen's cries softened immediately, his small fist curling around her finger. The familiar weight, the warmth, her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. "When did he last eat?" she asked, swaying gently as other customers turned to stare. Matthew ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving it disheveled. 2 hours ago? Maybe 3? I have formula, but he won't take the bottle. The pediatrician said. He trailed off, watching Owen settle against Kate's shoulder. "How are you doing? That?" Kate felt her manager's eyes boring into her from behind the register. The morning rush was starting, and she was supposed to be taking orders, not comforting a stranger's baby. But Owen's tiny body relaxed completely in her arms, his breathing evening out. "Some babies are picky," she whispered, inhaling the sweet newborn scent that made her chest ache. "Have you tried different bottle nipples? Dr. Brown's makes ones that feel more natural." Matthew's green eyes widened. "You know about babies." The simple statement hit Kate like a physical blow. "I knew about a baby." Her throat tightened, but she managed to nod. "Kate!" Her manager's sharp voice cut across the cafe. "Customers are waiting." "I should let you get back to work," Matthew said, reaching for Owen. But as soon as Kate transferred the baby back to his arms, Owen's face crumpled, and the crying resumed with renewed intensity. The sound drew stares from every corner of the cafe. A woman in yoga pants rolled her eyes. A businessman sighed loudly, checking his Rolex. Matthew's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come here. I saw you through the window and you looked like someone who might understand." Kate glanced at her manager, then at the growing line of impatient customers. Her rational mind screamed that this wasn't her problem. She had her own life to worry about: rent, bills, the suffocating weight of her own grief. But Owen's cries were weakening now, becoming the desperate whimpers of exhaustion. And Matthew looked like a man drowning in his own helplessness. "I get off at 3, she heard herself saying. "If you want to bring him back, I might be able to help." Matthew's face transformed with hope so raw it was almost painful to witness. "Really? Kate!" Her manager's voice carried a warning now. "I have to go," Kate said quickly, but she couldn't resist stroking Owen's soft cheek one more time. The baby turned toward her touch, and something inside her chest cracked open. Matthew nodded frantically. 3 o'clock. I'll be here." He headed toward the door, Owen's wails echoing behind him. Kate turned to face the line of caffeine-dependent customers. But all she could think about was the way Owen had fit perfectly in her arms, and the terrifying realization that she was already counting the hours until 3 o'clock. What she didn't know was that Matthew was thinking the exact same thing. At 2:47 p.m., Kate's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She wiped down the same espresso cup for the 3rd time, her eyes darting to the window every few seconds. The afternoon crowd had thinned, leaving only a college student hunched over her MacBook and an elderly man reading the Chicago Tribune with his black coffee. "You're making me nervous," Jessica said, sliding onto a bar stool across from Kate. Her friend had shown up unannounced, probably sensing something through the mysterious radar that longtime friends possessed. "I'm fine," Kate lied, checking her cracked phone screen. 2:49 p.m. Jessica raised an eyebrow, her perfectly applied mascara not budging despite the September humidity. "You've been weird all day. Your manager said some guy came in with a screaming baby this morning and you went all maternal." The word hit Kate like a slap. She set down the cup harder than necessary. "Don't. Kate, honey." Jessica's voice softened. "It's been 6 months. Maybe it's time to talk to someone. A real therapist, not just that mood app." "Dalio helps," Kate muttered. But her heart wasn't in the defense. Her phone showed 2:51 p.m. Through the window, she spotted him. Matthew walked slowly down the sidewalk, Owen's carrier hanging from his arm, like the weight of the world. Even from a distance, she could see the exhaustion in his shoulders, the way he moved like a man who'd forgotten how to sleep. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered, following Kate's gaze. "Is that him?" "Kate, he's gorgeous. Like, movie star gorgeous." Kate barely heard her. Matthew had stopped outside the cafe, staring through the glass with an expression that mixed hope and desperation in equal measure. Owen was quiet in his carrier, but even through the window, Kate could see the baby's restless movements. The door chimed. "Hi," Matthew said simply, and Kate noticed he'd changed into a clean shirt. Still Banana Republic, but this one wasn't wrinkled. His hair was freshly combed, and he smelled like expensive cologne mixed with baby formula. "This is Jessica," Kate said automatically, untying her apron. She was just leaving. Jessica's eyes widened with obvious curiosity, but she slid off the bar stool. "Actually, I was hoping to meet the mystery man who's got my best friend all flustered." "Jessica?" Kate's voice carried a warning. "I'm Matthew," he said politely, but his attention was entirely focused on Kate. "I brought everything. Bottles, formula, diapers. I even stopped at Target and bought those Dr. Brown's nipples you mentioned." Kate's chest tightened at the thoughtfulness. When was the last time someone had listened to her advice and actually acted on it? Owen began to fuss, making small mewling sounds that Kate felt in her bones. Without thinking, she reached for the carrier handle. "May I?" Matthew nodded quickly. "Please." Kate lifted Owen out of his carrier, and the baby immediately settled against her chest. His tiny hand found her silver bracelet, fingers wrapping around it with surprising strength. "Unbelievable," Matthew breathed. "The pediatrician said some babies just respond better to certain people, but I thought he was just being nice." Jessica watched the exchange with fascination. "How old is he?" 6 weeks, Matthew answered, but his eyes never left Kate and Owen. "His mom." He swallowed hard. "She died during delivery. Complications." The cafe went quiet except for the soft jazz playing from the speakers. Kate felt Jessica's sharp intake of breath, but all her attention was focused on Owen, who had begun making soft cooing sounds against her neck. "I'm so sorry," Kate whispered. Matthew nodded, running a hand over his beard. "The thing is, he won't eat. Not properly. The doctors say he's healthy, but he fights every bottle. I've tried everything. Different formulas, different positions, different temperatures, but with you." Owen had started rooting against Kate's shoulder, making hungry sounds that sent electricity through her nervous system. "He knows," she said quietly. "Knows what?" Matthew asked. Kate looked up, meeting his green eyes for the first time since he'd walked in. "That I can feed him." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to voice. Jessica cleared her throat awkwardly, but Kate barely noticed. "I should probably explain," Matthew said carefully, "what I'm really asking. I need someone to nurse him." The words dropped into the cafe's quiet atmosphere like stones into still water. Jessica's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, and even the college student looked up from her laptop. Kate's arms tightened instinctively around Owen, who had begun making increasingly desperate, hungry sounds against her shoulder. Her body was already responding, a familiar tingling sensation that she'd tried so hard to forget. "I know how it sounds," Matthew continued quickly, his voice low and urgent. "I know it's unconventional. But Owen's pediatrician explained that some babies who lose their mothers refuse bottles completely. They need—" He gestured helplessly toward Owen, who was now rooting frantically against Kate's neck. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered. "Kate, you can't seriously be considering—" "How much?" Kate interrupted, her practical side surfacing despite the emotional storm raging inside her chest. Matthew blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct response. What would be fair? I run a sustainable energy startup, so I can afford whatever you think is appropriate." Kate's mind raced. Her checking account had $47. The electricity bill was due tomorrow. Her student loans from nursing school, the degree she'd never finished, were 3 months behind. "Kate," Jessica said more firmly, "can we talk privately?" But Kate was studying Matthew's face, searching for something she couldn't quite name. Desperation, yes, but also a kind of raw honesty that reminded her of herself in those first weeks after her own loss. $5,000 a month, she said suddenly. Jessica choked on her coffee. Matthew's eyebrows shot up. Plus formula costs, and I'd need flexible hours at my day job. I can't quit here completely. Done, Matthew said without hesitation. Owen began to cry then. Not the angry wails from earlier, but the weak, exhausted cries of a baby who had fought hunger too long. Kate felt her body respond automatically, milk beginning to let down in a way that was both painful and profoundly right. "I need somewhere private," she said quietly. Matthew nodded toward the back of the cafe. "Is there?" Kate looked at her manager, who had been pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. "Can I use the break room for a few minutes?" "Kate, this is insane," Jessica hissed as they walked toward the back. "You don't know this man. You don't know anything about him." "I know his baby is hungry," Kate replied, settling into the single folding chair in the cramped break room. Matthew had followed, but stopped in the doorway, clearly uncertain about the boundaries of this new arrangement. Should I? He gestured vaguely toward the main cafe. Stay, Kate said, surprising herself. You should probably know how he feeds. She positioned Owen carefully, lifting her shirt just enough. The moment he latched, the relief was overwhelming. Not just for Owen, but for Kate's body, which had been carrying this unused capacity like a physical ache. Matthew sank into the doorframe, his face cycling through amazement, gratitude, and something that looked like grief. Her name was Caroline, he said quietly. My wife. She was so excited about breastfeeding. Read every book, took classes, bought all the special pillows. His voice caught. She never got the chance. Owen's desperate gulping slowed to a contented rhythm. Kate stroked his soft hair, marveling at how perfectly he fit against her. I'm sorry, she whispered. The doctor said he might accept formula eventually, but it's been 6 weeks. He's losing weight. I was starting to think. Matthew's Apple Watch buzzed insistently, but he ignored it. I drove around for 3 hours this morning, just trying to get him to stop crying. I saw you through the window, and something about the way you looked at him. I lost a baby too, Kate said suddenly. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Not the same way, but I understand. Matthew's green eyes met hers across the small room. In that moment, something shifted between them, an understanding that went deeper than their strange arrangement. Owen had fallen asleep at her breast, his tiny fist still clutching her silver bracelet. We should probably discuss logistics, Matthew said softly. Schedule, location, legal stuff. Kate nodded, but all she could think about was how right. This felt how Owen's weight against her chest was filling a hollow space she'd forgotten existed. Outside the break room, Jessica was pacing nervously, her phone already in hand to Google wet nurse legal requirements. Neither Kate nor Matthew noticed. They were too busy watching Owen sleep, both wondering if they'd just found salvation or signed up for heartbreak. The answer, Kate realized, might be both. 3 days later, Kate stood outside a gleaming high-rise in downtown Chicago, clutching a diaper bag that cost more than her monthly groceries. The Tesla Model Y in the parking garage should have been her first clue that Matthew's startup was more successful than he'd let on. Now, riding the elevator to the 32nd floor, Kate wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Her phone buzzed. Jessica, again. Text me every hour, I still think this is crazy. Kate ignored it, adjusting Owen's carrier against her chest. He'd been fussy all morning, and she could feel the familiar tension building in her breasts. Her body had adapted to his schedule with startling efficiency, waking her at 3 a.m., 6 a.m., and 10 a.m. like clockwork. The elevator opened to reveal a hallway that looked like something from Architectural Digest. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan, and the scent of expensive candles lingered in the air. Kate? Matthew's voice came from behind a partially open door at the end of the hall. She found him in his kitchen, sleeves rolled up, standing over what appeared to be an explosion of baby formula. Powder covered the granite countertops, and at least 3 different bottle brands lay scattered across the marble island. I tried to have backup ready, he said sheepishly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. In case you were late, or if something happened, or... He gestured helplessly at the mess. Kate set down the diaper bag and looked around the loft. Everything was beautiful and expensive and utterly impersonal. No photos, no clutter, no signs that anyone actually lived here. It felt like a magazine spread waiting for a photo shoot. Nice place, she said, because she had to say something. Caroline picked most of it, Matthew replied quietly. I haven't changed much. Owen began to fuss, saving them both from the awkwardness. Kate moved automatically toward the living room, settling onto the pristine white sofa that probably cost more than her car. Is it okay if I... She gestured toward her shirt. Matthew nodded quickly. Of course. Should I give you privacy? It's your house, Kate said, but she appreciated that he turned away, busying himself with cleaning up the formula disaster. As Owen latched and settled into his rhythm, Kate allowed herself to really look around. The view was stunning. Lake Michigan stretched endlessly beyond the windows, dotted with sailboats that looked like toys from this height. But the apartment felt hollow, like a beautiful shell with no life inside. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "2 years. Caroline and I bought it when the company started taking off." Matthew's voice came from the kitchen, where he was loading an impressive array of baby bottles into the dishwasher. "She said it would be perfect for raising kids. Great schools nearby, space for a nursery." His voice trailed off. Kate could see the doorway to what must be that nursery, painted pale yellow with a crib that looked like it had never been slept in. "What's your company?" she asked, partly from curiosity and partly to change the subject. "Solar energy storage. Basically, we're trying to make clean energy accessible for residential use." Matthew emerged from the kitchen looking more comfortable talking about work. "The technology exists, but the cost has been prohibitive for most homeowners. We've developed a system that cuts installation costs by 60%. Kate tried to focus on his words, but she was distracted by the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his work. It was the first time she'd seen him look truly animated. "Sounds important," she said. "Caroline always said I got carried away, talking about it." Matthew sat down in the chair across from her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "She used to joke that I'd bore people to death at parties." Owen had finished eating and was making soft, contented sounds against Kate's shoulder. She adjusted her shirt and began the gentle patting motion that usually brought up his burp. "Tell me about her," Kate said softly. Matthew's face went through several expressions before settling on something that looked like painful fondness. "She was a pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial. That's how we met, actually. I was there for a presentation on energy efficiency and she thought I was lost." Kate smiled despite herself. "Were you?" "Completely." Matthew's grin was brief but genuine. "She gave me directions to the conference room and I asked if she wanted to get coffee afterward. She said yes, but only if I promised not to talk about solar panels for the entire hour." "Did you manage it?" "Barely. But she married me anyway." Owen let out a satisfying burp, and Kate began the gentle swaying motion that would hopefully ease him into a nap. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the massive windows was warm and golden, and for a moment the apartment felt less like a mausoleum and more like a home. "She would have loved this," Matthew said quietly, watching Kate with Owen. Caroline always said she could tell within 5 minutes whether someone was naturally good with kids. She would have taken one look at you and known. Kate felt something twist in her chest, part pleasure at the compliment, part pain at the reminder of everything she'd lost. Her phone buzzed with a WhatsApp message from Jessica. "How's it going? Still think this guy might be a serial killer?" Kate glanced at Matthew, who was scrolling through work emails on his phone but kept looking up to check on Owen with the anxious attention of a new parent. "He's not a serial killer," she typed back, "but I think this might be more complicated than I thought." 2 weeks in, and Kate's life had split into 2 completely different worlds. At 6 a.m., she was Kate the barista, pulling espresso shots at Brewhaven with formula stains on her Carter's baby onesie from the night before. By 10 a.m., she was in Matthew's gleaming loft, surrounded by luxury she'd only seen in magazines, nursing Owen while looking out at a view that cost more per month than she'd ever made in a year. The whiplash was exhausting. "You're different," her manager commented during the morning rush, watching Kate efficiently handle a particularly difficult customer who was complaining about foam density. "More patient." Kate shrugged, but she knew he was right. The constant edge of anxiety that had defined her for months was softening. Having Owen to care for gave her day structure, purpose. Even her Dailyo entries had shifted. Instead of rating her mood as terrible or meh, she found herself selecting okay and sometimes even good. Her phone buzzed with a text from Matthew. "Owen's being fussy. Can you come early?" Kate glanced at the clock. 11:30 a.m. She wasn't supposed to be there until noon, but the thought of Owen crying made her chest tighten with an urgency that had nothing to do with their financial arrangement. "I need to leave," she told her manager. He frowned. "Your shift." Doesn't end until... Family emergency, Kate lied smoothly, already untying her apron. 20 minutes later, she was stepping off the elevator to the sound of Owen's distressed cries echoing through the hallway. She found Matthew pacing the living room, bouncing Owen against his shoulder with the slightly panicked movements of someone who'd tried everything and failed. "Thank God," Matthew said, relief flooding his face. "He's been like this for an hour. I tried the bottles, the pacifier, changed his diaper twice." Kate took Owen without a word, and his cries immediately shifted to frustrated whimpers. She could feel his hunger in the desperate way he turned toward her, rooting against her shirt. "Poor baby," she murmured, settling onto the couch. "You were just waiting for me, weren't you?" As Owen latched and began to nurse contentedly, Kate noticed Matthew's appearance. His usually pristine shirt was wrinkled and damp with what she assumed was spit up. His hair stuck up at odd angles and there were dark circles under his green eyes. "Rough morning?" she asked. Matthew sank into the chair across from her, running both hands through his disheveled hair. "I had a conference call at 9. Important. Investors." Owen was fine when it started, but about 20 minutes in, he just exploded. I had to mute myself while he screamed in the background. Kate tried not to smile. "How did that go over?" "They asked if I had adequate childcare." Matthew's laugh was hollow. "I told them I was working on it." The comment stung more than Kate expected. Was that all she was? Childcare? "Speaking of which," Matthew continued, seemingly oblivious to her reaction, "I've been thinking about making this more official. Legal contract, benefits, that sort of thing. My lawyer says..." "Your lawyer?" Kate interrupted, Owen pausing in his nursing to look up at her with those serious blue-gray eyes. "Just to protect everyone involved. You, me, Owen. I want to make sure you're covered if anything happens." Kate felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What kind of anything?" Matthew seemed to realize he'd said something wrong. "Not anything bad. I just meant insurance, workers' compensation, clear expectations about schedules and responsibilities." The words hung between them, transforming what had felt personal back into something transactional. Kate looked down at Owen, who had resumed nursing, his tiny hand wrapped around her finger in a grip that felt anything but professional. "Right," she said quietly. "Of course." Matthew's phone buzzed on the coffee table. A Slack notification followed immediately by another. Then another. He glanced at it with the guilty look of someone trying not to be rude but failing. "Go ahead," Kate said. "Answer it." "It's not important." Another buzz. Then a call. Matthew's Apple Watch lit up with an incoming video call notification. "Matthew, just take it. I'm not going anywhere." He gave her a grateful look and accepted the call, walking toward his home office. Kate could hear his voice shifting into professional mode. "Sorry about earlier. Owen had a moment, but everything's under control now." Kate stroked Owen's soft hair, listening to Matthew discuss quarterly projections and deployment timelines. The baby's eyes were starting to droop, satisfaction and sleepiness taking over. This was the strange intimacy of their arrangement. She knew the rhythm of Owen's breathing, the way he liked to be held, the exact sound he made when he was about to fall asleep. But Matthew remained largely a mystery, glimpsed only in fragments between work calls and careful politeness. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Drinks tonight? You've been MIA for 2 weeks." Kate realized she hadn't socialized with anyone except Matthew and Owen since this arrangement started. Her old life, grabbing drinks after work, scrolling, Instagram until midnight complaining about her job, felt like it belonged to someone else. Matthew returned from his call looking apologetic. "Sorry, crisis at the Atlanta installation site." "It's fine," Kate said, but she found herself curious. "Do you travel a lot for work?" "Used to, less since Owen." He sat down again, his attention immediately focused on the sleeping baby in Kate's arms. "Caroline always complained that I was gone too much, said I'd need to figure out better work-life balance before the baby came." The reference to Caroline created its usual moment of awkward silence. Kate had learned to navigate these conversational landmines, but they were everywhere in Matthew's life. Photos he'd forgotten to put away, plans that had been made for 3 people instead of 2. Owen had fallen completely asleep, his mouth slack, one tiny fist still clutching Kate's shirt. The afternoon sunlight caught the gold in his hair, and Kate felt the familiar tug of affection that was becoming harder to classify as purely professional. "He looks like her," Matthew said softly. "Caroline. Everyone says he has my eyes, but his expression when he sleeps. That's all, Caroline." Kate looked down at Owen's peaceful face and wondered what it would be like to see your lost love reflected in your child's features every single day. "That must be hard," she said. Matthew nodded. "But also comforting, like she's still here somehow." Kate's chest tightened with an emotion she couldn't name. Grief, yes, but also something else, something that felt dangerously close to longing. The Dr. Brown's bottle sat forgotten on Matthew's kitchen counter, and Kate knew she was in trouble. It was 2 a.m. on a Thursday, and she was pacing Matthew's living room in her pajamas, old nursing school sweatpants and a tank top that had seen better days. Owen had been cluster feeding all evening, refusing to settle, and somewhere around midnight Matthew had called her in desperation. "I'm so sorry," he'd said over Owen's wails in the background. "I know it's late, but he won't take the bottle, and I have that presentation to the board tomorrow. I'll be right there," Kate had said, already reaching for her keys. Now Owen was finally peaceful, sleeping against her chest while she swayed by the massive windows. The city sparkled below them, and Kate caught her reflection in the glass, hair messy, no makeup, holding a baby like it was the most natural thing in the world. Matthew emerged from his bedroom, having changed from his rumpled dress shirt into a soft gray Patagonia hoodie and sweatpants. His hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, and Kate realized this was the most relaxed she'd ever seen him. "How is he?" Matthew whispered. "Finally down. I think he was overtired." Kate continued her gentle swaying. "Sometimes they fight sleep when they're exhausted." "How do you know all this?" Matthew asked, settling into the chair nearby. "About babies, I mean. You mentioned nursing school." Kate had been dreading this question for weeks. "I was 8 months pregnant when I lost him," she said quietly. "Stillborn. Cord accident." The words came out steadier than she'd expected. Maybe because it was dark, or maybe because Owen's warm weight against her chest made the pain feel less sharp. Matthew was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine." "His name was David," Kate continued, surprising herself. She rarely talked about her son. "I had all the classes, read all the books, bought the crib, painted the nursery, and then—" She shrugged, the gesture feeling inadequate for such enormous loss. "That's why you know what Owen needs," Matthew said softly. Kate nodded. "My body was ready to be a mother. It just never got the chance." They sat in comfortable silence watching Owen sleep. The city hummed quietly below them, and Kate felt something shift between her and Matthew. The professional distance that had defined their relationship dissolving into something more intimate. "Caroline was terrified," Matthew said suddenly. "About breastfeeding. She read horror stories online about latch problems and supply issues. I kept telling her she was overthinking it, that it would come naturally." His laugh was bitter. "Shows what I knew." Kate looked at him across the dimly lit room. She would have figured it out. "Most people do. Maybe. But watching you with Owen, you make it look effortless." "It's not effortless," Kate said. "I'm up at weird hours, my body doesn't belong to me anymore, and I haven't had a full night's sleep in 3 weeks. It's just worth it." Kate looked down at Owen's peaceful face, his tiny features relaxed in sleep. "Yeah, it's worth it." Matthew's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another Slack notification. He glanced at it but didn't reach for it. "Important?" Kate asked. "Always is, apparently." Matthew rubbed his eyes. "The Atlanta project is behind schedule, and the investors are getting nervous. I should probably be reviewing the presentation slides instead of what? Instead of sitting here talking to you at 2 a.m. like a normal person. The comment hung between them, loaded with implications. Kate felt her pulse quicken. When's the last time you did something normal? She asked. Matthew considered this seriously. Before Caroline got pregnant, maybe? We used to go to this little Thai place in Lincoln Park every Friday night. Order too much food, split a bottle of wine, argue about movies. Sounds nice. It was. Matthew's voice was wistful. Simple. I keep thinking I should try to get back to that. Normal life, normal routines. But everything feels different now. Owen stirred slightly in Kate's arms, making soft, sleeping sounds. She adjusted her position carefully, not wanting to wake him. Different isn't necessarily bad, she said. No, Matthew agreed, looking directly at her. Sometimes different is exactly what you need. The moment stretched between them, charged, with something that had nothing to do with their professional arrangement. Kate felt herself leaning slightly forward, drawn by the intensity in Matthew's green eyes. Then Owen woke up, letting out a sharp cry that shattered the intimate atmosphere. Sorry, buddy, Kate whispered, shifting him to a more comfortable position. Did we wake you? But as she looked up to make a joke about Owen's timing, she found Matthew watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. It wasn't gratitude or professional appreciation. It was longing. Kate, he said quietly, and her name sounded different in his voice, softer, more personal. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Where are you? Your location shows. Downtown. Reality crashed back. Kate glanced at the time, 2:47 a.m. She was in her pajamas in a man's apartment, holding his baby, having the kind of conversation that belonged to people who were more than just business partners. I should probably head home soon, she said, but she made no move to get up. Probably, Matthew agreed, but he didn't look away. Owen had settled back into sleep, but Kate could feel the tension in the room shifting into something that felt both inevitable and terrifying. What she didn't know was that Matthew was thinking the exact same thing. The fever started at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Kate felt it before the thermometer confirmed her worst fear. Owen's small body was burning against her chest as she paced Matthew's living room, his usual contented nursing replaced by restless fussing. The digital thermometer in her shaking hand read 101.2 degrees. It's probably nothing, Matthew said, but his voice carried the same panic Kate felt clawing at her throat. Babies get fevers all the time, right? Kate's nursing school training kicked in, overriding her emotional response. Not at 8 weeks, not this high. She was already reaching for Owen's diaper bag, muscle memory taking over. We need to get him to Northwestern Memorial. Now. The emergency room at 4 a.m. was a special kind of purgatory. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look sickly, the smell of disinfectant and fear, and the exhausted faces of people who'd rather be anywhere else. Kate held Owen's carrier against her chest, whispering soft reassurances while Matthew paced beside the registration desk. Baby Hayes, the triage nurse called after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Owen's temperature had climbed to 101.8 degrees. The pediatric resident, a young woman who looked like she'd been awake for 36 hours straight, examined him with gentle efficiency while Kate and Matthew hovered nearby. He's responsive, which is good, the doctor said, using her stethoscope to listen to Owen's tiny chest. But we'll need to run some tests. Blood work, urine culture, possible spinal tap. Spinal tap? Matthew's voice cracked. The doctor's expression was professionally sympathetic. I know it sounds scary, but with infants this young, we have to rule out serious infection. Meningitis, sepsis. Kate felt the room tilt slightly. She gripped the edge of Owen's examination bed, her silver bracelet catching the harsh hospital lights. Are you the mother? The doctor asked Kate directly. No, I'm... Kate started, then stopped. What was she? I'm his caregiver. The doctor nodded and turned to Matthew. And your dad? Yes, Matthew said firmly. Whatever he needs, whatever tests, just please help him. They moved Owen to a private room in the pediatric unit, a space that felt both too small and too large for the fear that filled it. Kate settled into the uncomfortable bedside chair, Owen's carrier within arm's reach, while Matthew stood by the window making urgent phone calls to cancel meetings. "I need to feed him," Kate said, when Owen began making weak, hungry sounds. The nursing staff had provided a privacy screen, and Kate settled into the familiar rhythm of nursing while trying to ignore the IV line that looked enormous against Owen's tiny arm. His fever made him lethargic, and he nursed in bursts, falling asleep mid-feed before startling awake again. "The tests will take a few hours," the nurse explained, checking Owen's temperature again, still elevated. "Try to get some rest." "Owen," Kate almost laughed. She hadn't slept properly in weeks, and now with Owen sick, the idea seemed impossible. Matthew had finished his calls and pulled the second chair close to Kate. "Can I do anything?" Kate shook her head, but she was grateful for his presence. They sat in the kind of silence that comes from shared worry, watching Owen's restless sleep. "I keep thinking about Caroline," Matthew said quietly. "How she'd handle this. She was so calm in medical situations. I used to joke that nothing rattled her." "She'd probably be doing exactly what you're doing," Kate said. "Worrying, staying close, making sure he has everything he needs." Matthew's laugh was hollow. "I feel so useless. You know what to do, how to take care of him. I just panic." Kate looked at him across the narrow space between their chairs. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled from their rushed trip to the hospital, and there were dark circles under his green eyes. But his attention was entirely focused on Owen, his love for his son written across every tired line of his face. "You're not useless," she said. "You got him here. You made the hard decisions. That's what fathers do." The word father seemed to resonate with Matthew. He straightened slightly, some of the panic leaving his expression. Owen stirred in Kate's arms, making soft, distressed sounds. She began humming, an old hymn from her childhood that her grandmother used to sing. The melody seemed to settle him, his breathing evening out. "That's beautiful," Matthew said. "What is it?" "Be thou my vision," Kate replied. "My grandmother sang it when I was scared." "Sing it again." Kate's voice was soft but clear in the quiet hospital room. "Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Naught be all else to me, save that thou art." As she sang, Owen's fever-bright eyes fixed on her face with the kind of focus that made her chest tighten. His tiny hand found her finger and gripped it with surprising strength. Matthew listened with an expression Kate couldn't quite read. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Caroline would have loved that," he said finally. "She always said music was healing." Kate felt tears prick her eyes, for Owen, for Caroline, for the strange family they'd become in this sterile hospital room. When Matthew reached over and covered her free hand with his, she didn't pull away. "Whatever the tests show," he said quietly. "Thank you for being here, for taking care of him, for," he struggled for words, "for caring about him the way you do." Kate met his eyes, seeing her own fear and love reflected there. "He's not just a job anymore," she admitted. "I know," Matthew said, "and neither are you." The words hung between them, heavy with implications they weren't ready to examine. Outside their window, Chicago was waking up. Morning traffic, coffee shops opening, people starting normal days while Kate and Matthew sat in a hospital room, holding vigil over a baby who belonged to both of them and neither of them. When the test results came back clean, just a minor virus that would resolve on its own, Kate felt something inside her chest crack open with relief and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. But as she watched Matthew cradle Owen against his chest, whispering promises and apologies into his soft hair, she realized that somewhere between the sleepless nights and the shared worries, she'd fallen in love with both of them. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Kate had been avoiding Matthew for 3 days, and they both knew it. Since Owen's hospital scare, she'd been arriving exactly on schedule and leaving the moment her shift ended. No lingering conversations, no shared coffee while Owen napped. No comfortable silences that had become dangerously intimate. She'd even started bringing her own water bottle to avoid using his kitchen. The problem was, avoiding Matthew meant avoiding the truth that had hit her like a freight train in that hospital room. She was in love with a man she couldn't have, caring for a baby who wasn't hers, living a life that wasn't real. "You're being weird," Matthew said as she prepared to leave on Friday afternoon. Owen was sleeping peacefully in his bouncer, completely recovered from his fever, blissfully unaware of the tension crackling between the adults. "I'm being professional," Kate replied, not meeting his eyes as she gathered her purse and jacket. "Professional." Matthew's voice carried a note she couldn't identify. "Is that what we're calling it?" Kate's hand stilled on the door handle. "What else would we call it?" "Kate." The way he said her name made her turn around despite herself. Matthew was standing by the windows, backlit by the late afternoon sun, looking like something from a magazine shoot. "Can we please talk?" "About what?" "About the fact that you've barely looked at me since Tuesday. About the fact that you flinch every time I get within 3 feet of you. About whatever's making you run away from here like the building's on fire." Kate's carefully constructed walls began to crumble. "I'm not running away." "Then stay. Have dinner with us. Owen loves when you're here for his evening routine." The invitation was casual, but Kate heard the underlying plea. She also heard the dangerous word us, as if they were a unit, a family. "I can't," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because I'm falling apart. Because every time you look at me like that, I forget this is temporary. Because Owen feels more like my son than your employee. Because I dream about a life where this is real. Because this isn't what we agreed to," she said instead. Matthew crossed the room slowly, stopping just close enough that Kate could smell his cologne mixed with baby formula. "What if I want to renegotiate?" Kate's heart hammered against her ribs. "Matthew, I know this is complicated. I know. The timing is terrible. I know, Caroline." His voice caught on his wife's name. "I know I'm probably the last person who should be feeling this way. But Kate, when I watched you take care of Owen in that hospital, when you sang to him and held him like he was your own." "He's not my own," Kate said sharply, more to remind herself than him. "Isn't he, though?" Matthew's green eyes were intense, searching. "You're the one who feeds him, comforts him, knows exactly what he needs before he cries. You're the one who gets up at 2 a.m. when he's fussy. You're the one who loves him." The word love hung between them like a challenge. "That's my job," Kate whispered, but the words felt hollow. "No. Your job is nursing. What you do for Owen, for me, that's something else entirely." Kate felt tears threatening and hated herself for the weakness. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Make this into something it's not. I'm not Caroline. I'm not Owen's mother. I'm just—" She struggled for words. "I'm just the help." Matthew's face went through several expressions before settling on something that looked like hurt anger. "Is that really what you think?" Before Kate could answer, Owen began to fuss from his bouncer. Without thinking, they both moved toward him at the same time, their hands colliding as they reached for the baby. The contact sent electricity up Kate's arm. Matthew's fingers closed over hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "Kate," he said softly. She looked up to find his face inches from hers, his green eyes dark with an emotion that made her breath catch. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings, but the rest of her was drowning in the intensity of his gaze. "This is crazy," she whispered. "I know. It's too soon. You lost your wife. I lost my baby. We're both disasters. I know. Owen deserves better than 2 broken people trying to figure out how to be whole." "Maybe," Matthew said, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. "Or maybe broken people understand each other better than anyone else." Owen's fussing escalated to proper crying, but neither Kate nor Matthew moved. The sound that usually sent Kate into immediate action felt distant, less important than the moment stretching between her and Matthew. "I can't lose another family," Kate said, the words torn from somewhere deep in her chest. Matthew's face softened. "Who says you'd lose anything? Everyone leaves, everyone dies, everyone—" "Not everyone," Matthew said firmly. "I'm right here, Owen's right here, we're not going anywhere." Owen's cries reached a crescendo, and Kate's body responded automatically, pulling away from Matthew to lift the baby. As Owen settled against her chest, his crying dissolving into snuffled complaints, Kate felt the weight of what she was risking. This wasn't just about her heart anymore. It was about Owen, who lit up every time she walked into a room. It was about Matthew, who looked at her like she was the answer to questions he didn't know how to ask. It was about the possibility of a real family, built from shared grief and unexpected love. "My lease is up next month," she said suddenly. Not sure why she was sharing this information. Matthew went very still. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Jessica's right. I'm thinking this is crazy. I'm thinking you're going to wake up one day and realize you hired a nanny, not a—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Not a what?" Kate looked down at Owen, who had stopped crying and was now gazing up at her with those serious blue-gray eyes that looked so much like Caroline's. "Not a mother," she whispered. When she looked up, Matthew was watching her with an expression that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. "What if I told you," he said carefully, "that Owen already has a mother? And what if I told you that her name is Kate?" The words hit Kate like a physical blow. Joy, terror, hope, and panic crashed over her in waves. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them," she managed. Matthew stepped closer, close enough that Owen could have reached out and touched his father's face. "I mean them," he said. "The question is, do you?" Kate looked at Matthew, then down at Owen, then back at Matthew. Three people who had found each other in the wreckage of loss, who had built something beautiful and fragile and terrifying. She started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. But before she could finish her thought, Owen reached up with one tiny hand and grabbed Matthew's finger, while his other hand remained fisted in Kate's shirt, as if he knew exactly what he was doing, as if he was choosing them both. The ring. Box sat on Matthew's kitchen counter for 2 weeks before Kate finally saw it. She'd been living in the loft for a month now, officially moved in after her lease expired, and Matthew had quietly suggested she take the guest room for Owen's sake. They'd fallen into a domestic rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Morning coffee while Owen babbled in his high chair, shared grocery lists sent via WhatsApp, tag team parenting when Owen was teething. But they hadn't talked about the future. They hadn't defined what they were to each other. They existed in a beautiful, fragile bubble that felt too precious to examine too closely. Until Kate walked into the kitchen at 6 a.m. and saw the small, velvet box sitting next to the coffee maker like an unexploded bomb. Her hands shook as she reached for it, then pulled back, then reached again. "It was my grandmother's." Matthew's voice came from behind her, rough with sleep and nervousness. Kate spun around to find him standing in the doorway, wearing rumpled pajama pants and a Northwestern University t-shirt that had seen better days. His dark hair was sticking up at odd angles and there were pillow creases on his cheek. "Matthew," she started. "Before you say anything," he interrupted, running both hands through his hair. "I know how this looks. I know the timing is terrible. I know we've only been, whatever we are, for a few weeks." Kate's heart was hammering so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Then why?" Matthew crossed the kitchen slowly, stopping just close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. "Because yesterday when you were giving Owen his bath, you started singing that song again, 'Be Thou My Vision.' And he was splashing and laughing, and you looked so happy, so right. And I thought—" He swallowed hard. "I thought that Caroline would want this for us, for Owen." Kate felt tears prick her eyes. "You can't marry me because of what Caroline would have wanted. That's not why." Matthew's voice was steadier now, more certain. "I want to marry you because when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is whether you slept, Well, because you know exactly how Owen likes his bottle warmed and which lullaby makes him stop crying. Because you left your old life behind to build a new one with us. I didn't have much of an old life to leave behind, Kate said quietly. Yes, you did. You had independence. You had the choice to walk away from this mess whenever you wanted. You had the safety of not caring too much. Matthew stepped closer. But you stayed. Even when it got complicated, even when it got scary, you stayed. Owen's morning babbling drifted from his crib through the baby monitor, the sweet sounds of a happy, healthy baby waking up. Both Kate and Matthew glanced toward the monitor automatically, another sign of how seamlessly they'd learned to parent, together. He's going to want breakfast soon, Kate said, deflecting. Kate. Matthew's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Look at me. She met his eyes reluctantly, seeing her own fears and hopes reflected there. I love you, he said simply. I love the way you hum while you fold laundry. I love that you still get excited about small things. Owen's first smile, finding a $20 bill in an old coat pocket, the perfect foam on a latte. I love that you're strong enough to rebuild your life and gentle enough to heal mine. Kate's tears spilled over despite her best efforts to hold them back. I'm scared. So am I. Terrified, actually. Matthew's thumb traced across her knuckles. But I'm more scared of wasting the second chance we've been given. Owen's babbling turned more insistent, and Kate could hear him starting to fuss. Her body responded automatically, the familiar tingle that meant he was getting hungry. He needs me, she said. We both need you. Matthew picked up the ring box with his free hand. The question is, do you need us? Kate looked at the box, then at Matthew's face, then toward the nursery where Owen was beginning to work up to a proper cry. 6 months ago, she'd been alone in a cramped studio apartment, drowning in debt and depression. Now she was standing in a beautiful kitchen, being proposed to by a man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon, with a baby who needed her in ways that had nothing to do with money or contracts. Open it, she whispered. Matthew's hands shook slightly as he lifted the ring box lid. Inside was a vintage solitaire, elegant and simple, with a round diamond that caught the morning light streaming through the windows. It's beautiful, Kate breathed. Caroline helped me pick it out, Matthew said softly. Before she got sick, she said that someday if something happened to her, she wanted me to find someone who would love Owen like her own child. Someone who would make me remember how to be happy. Kate's chest felt tight with emotion. She knew she might not make it. The pregnancy was complicated from the beginning. Matthew's voice was thick with memory. She made me promise that I wouldn't spend the rest of my life mourning, that I'd find someone to share Owen's childhood with. Owen's cries were getting more urgent now, and Kate's body was responding despite the emotional intensity of the moment. I have to feed him, she said. I know. Matthew got down on one knee right there in the kitchen, still holding her hand. Kate Michelle Anderson, will you marry me? Will you be Owen's mother and my wife and the person I build the rest of my life with? Kate looked down at this man who'd hired her to feed his baby, and somehow ended up feeding her soul instead. She thought about David, the son she'd lost, and how caring for Owen had slowly healed the broken places in her heart. She thought about the life she'd been living, existing rather than thriving, and the life that was being offered to her now. Owen's cries reached a crescendo and Kate made her decision. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, but we have to continue this conversation after I feed our son. Our son. The words felt right in a way that made everything else fall into place. Matthew slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Owen's cries had reached the level that meant business. Duty calls, Kate said, admiring the way her grandmother's ring caught the light. For both of us, Matthew corrected, following her toward the nursery. As Kate lifted Owen from his crib, settling into the nursing chair that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat, Matthew perched on the arm of the chair beside them. Owen latched immediately, his cries dissolving into contented nursing sounds. "So," Matthew said, stroking Owen's soft hair, "how do you feel about June weddings?" Kate looked up at him, this man who'd become her partner in every way that mattered, and smiled. "I feel like Owen might have strong opinions about the timing," she said. "He's going to be walking by then. Someone will have to chase him down the aisle." "Good thing he'll have two parents to tag team," Matthew said and leaned down to kiss the top of Kate's head. Outside the windows, Chicago was waking up to another ordinary day. But inside the nursery, surrounded by morning light and the soft sounds of a nursing baby, Kate Anderson, soon to be Kate Hayes, was living the extraordinary life she'd never dared to dream possible. 2 years later, Kate Hayes stood at the kitchen window of their Lincoln Park house, watching Matthew chase a toddler with wild blonde curls across their small backyard. Owen, now 2.5, shrieked with laughter as his father pretended to be a monster, his chubby legs carrying him in wobbly circles around the swing set they'd installed last spring. The morning light caught her wedding ring as she stirred pancake batter, the same vintage solitaire that had started everything. Some mornings, she still couldn't believe this was her life. The house with the white picket fence, the husband who brought her coffee in bed, the son who called her mama without any memory of a time when she wasn't his mother. "Mama, Daddy's being silly," Owen's voice carried through the open window, followed by Matthew's exaggerated roar. Kate smiled, adding blueberries to the pancake batter. Sunday morning pancakes had become their tradition. Owen helped by stirring, mostly just making a mess. Matthew handled the griddle and Kate managed both of them while simultaneously preventing their kitchen from looking like a disaster zone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Still can't believe you're a suburban mom now. Brunch next week?" Kate typed back, "Can't. Owen's swim lessons at 10, grocery shopping at 11, and Matthew's parents are visiting." She paused, then added, "I love my boring life." And she did. After years of uncertainty, financial stress, and emotional chaos, the predictable rhythm of family life felt like the greatest luxury imaginable. The sliding door opened, and Matthew appeared carrying a grass-stained, giggling Owen. "Someone needs a bath before breakfast," Matthew announced, kissing Kate's cheek as he passed. His hair was mussed from playing outside, and there was a streak of dirt on his Northwestern University t-shirt. "No bath," Owen protested, but he was already reaching for Kate with the automatic expectation that she would solve all problems. "How about pancakes first, then bath?" Kate negotiated, lifting Owen from Matthew's arms and settling him on her hip. "Pancakes," Owen agreed enthusiastically, patting Kate's face with his slightly grubby hands. Kate caught Matthew watching them with the expression he got sometimes, soft and amazed, like he still couldn't quite believe they were his family. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just—" Matthew shrugged, starting the coffee maker. Caroline would have loved this. Sunday mornings pancakes, Owen getting dirty in the backyard. The mention of Caroline no longer created awkward silences. She was part of their family story now, the woman who'd given Owen life and given Matthew permission to love again. Her picture sat on the mantel next to their wedding photos, and Owen knew her as Mama Caroline, the angel who'd made sure he got the best mama and daddy in the world. She would have loved the mess he makes with syrup, Kate agreed, settling Owen into his booster seat. "Remember last week when he got it in his hair? And on the walls," Matthew added. "I'm still finding sticky spots." Owen banged his sippy cup on his tray, clearly tired of being discussed rather than attended to. Kate poured the first pancake onto the griddle while Matthew got Owen's milk and cut up strawberries, the domestic choreography they'd perfected over 2 years of marriage. "Oh," Matthew said casually, flipping the first pancake. "I have news." Kate looked up from where she was wiping Owen's face. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. Great news, actually." Matthew's grin was barely contained. "The Atlanta project got final approval. Full funding, 3-year contract." Kate felt her own smile spread across her face. "Matthew, that's incredible." "There's more." Matthew slid the first pancake onto Owen's plate, cutting it into tiny pieces. They want me to head up the West Coast expansion, which means promotion, Kate finished. Big promotion. Plus it means I can work from home more. Maybe take some of that paternity leave I never used. Kate felt something flutter in her. Paternity leave. Matthew met her eyes across their small kitchen, and Kate saw the hope there that matched her own. They'd been trying for 6 months, not desperately, not with the clinical precision that had marked her first pregnancy, but with the quiet confidence of people who'd learned that families came together in their own time and their own way. "Are you saying—" Matthew started. Kate pulled the pregnancy test from her pocket, the one she'd taken that morning while the boys were outside playing. 2 pink lines, clear as day. "I'm saying Owen's going to be a big brother," she said softly. Matthew's face went through several emotions before settling on pure joy. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, lifting Kate off her feet and spinning her around while Owen clapped from his high chair, not understanding but delighted by the excitement. "Another baby?" Matthew said against her hair. "Kate, another baby." "Due in March," Kate said, her voice thick with happy tears, "right around Owen's 3rd birthday." Matthew set her down carefully, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach. "How are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you need to sit down?" Kate laughed at his immediate shift into protective mode. "I'm fine, better than fine, I'm perfect." And she was. Standing in her sunny kitchen with pancakes burning on the griddle, her husband's hands on her belly, and Owen demanding attention from his high chair, Kate felt the deep satisfaction of a life that had been broken and rebuilt into something even more beautiful. "Mama, Daddy, pancakes." Owen's voice cut through their moment, reminding them that toddlers wait for no one. "Coming, buddy," Kate said, turning back to the stove. But Matthew's arm stayed around her waist, his hand resting protectively over their secret. As they served breakfast and settled into their Sunday morning routine, Kate caught sight of their reflection in the window. A family of 3 about to become 4, surrounded by the beautiful, ordinary chaos of domestic life. Her phone buzzed with a Dailyo notification. "How are you feeling today?" Kate glanced at the mood-tracking app she still used, more out of habit than necessity these days. Without hesitation, she selected the brightest, happiest emoji on the screen. Radiant. Outside, Chicago hummed with the life of 8 million people pursuing their own versions of happiness. But inside their small house on their quiet street, Kate Hayes was living proof that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest act of caring for someone who needs you. And in March, there would be someone new to care for, another chance to turn strangers into family, another opportunity to prove that love multiplies rather than divides. Kate's hand found Matthew's over her stomach, and Owen reached for both of them with syrup-sticky fingers, already claiming his place as the best big brother in the world. Some fairy tales begin once upon a time, but the best ones, the real ones, begin with someone brave enough to say yes to love, even when it comes in unexpected packages, especially then. What did you learn from Kate and Matthew's story? Would you have the courage to take the same leap of faith they did? Your participation in our channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.